Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here with you today, and I've got a good one. This is an interview, or actually a talk, on Larry Polloack's YouTube channel where he recounts some Synthol protocols from Rich Piana and Nasser and this stuff is gold. Larry has some of the best stories in bodybuilding. I'm going to watch this with you. This is a react video. Larry, if you're listening, I would love to get you on to talk about some of the stuff that you've mentioned in past videos. You have some great stories, dude. I love listening to you, but I'm going to react. I'm going to put a link in the video description below, so if you guys want to watch this full interview / podcast, whatever you want to call it, this is a great one. I enjoyed every minute of this. I don't watch a lot of content anymore. I just don't have time. And when I do, I want to make sure it's stuff that I enjoy. And this one was fantastic. Really, very well produced. Well done, guys. Kudos for that one. But before we get started, just remind you guys that I have Team Anabolic Bodybuilding up and running now. It's our member community where you can talk to me about your questions and concerns when it comes to bodybuilding, PEDs, nutrition, fat loss, whatever the case may be. It's like $30 a month. It's super cheap right now. If you want to join, we also do a weekly live private Q&A with the members. You can get in on that. Link is in the video description below. I'm not going to talk about this too much longer, and we're going to get into this Larry Polloack Synthol video. It is pretty freaking awesome in just 1 second.
Golem that passed away, and you want to show?
Yep.
He's a 352 pound. I guess you'd call him a bodybuilder.
I was talking about Ilya Golem, who just recently passed away. Mass monster. I don't think he was a pro. I don't know. Could be wrong about that, but gigantic guy. Clearly had some jimmied up arms and shoulders and stuff. There was definitely some weird stuff going on with his body. He kind of had the Rich Piana thing going on.
I say a guess because, well, I guess he was a bodybuilder, but in my opinion, he wasn't a real bodybuilder.
I mean, I don't think he was a competitive bodybuilder, but
Right.
he definitely trained, definitely took a lot of gear, took a lot of Synthol, did a lot of stuff to look enormous.
Get into a little bit more of what he did, but he was a disciple of the late Rich Piana, and I'm pretty positive by the look of him that he did exactly what Rich Piana did, and he just passed away last couple of days. Rich Piana passed away a couple of years back, and
I'm trying to think when Rich passed. It's been 6-7 years now. It's been more than a couple of years. But yeah, Rich did some crazy stuff. I think they talk about it here in a bit, but if I recall correctly, Rich was injecting some sort of plastic into his arms or filling them up with like silicone or something like that. He had some really weird shit going on. And Kurt Havens and I have talked about this. I remember Dante Trudell. I think it was Dante talked about it a long time ago, where the stuff might potentially lead to the cardiovascular and kidney problems that a lot of dudes have. And I'll tell you this, folks, Synthol is site enhancement oil, whatever you want to call it, is more widely used in bodybuilding than you think. I would say most people, not all, but most at a highly competitive level are using it. I've used it a little bit in my arms. I've dabbled with it. I haven't done a ton, maybe like going into the last month or so of a show just to keep my arms a little bit fuller because I tend to flatten out. My shoulders are big. I don't need it there. I've messed with it. I've used the painless pumps in the past. I don't think they make it anymore. The guy that had the original formula passed away. I know there's been another one. I've tried Boston Lloyd's stuff, the 3cc stuff. I've not run a couple bottles of it, but nothing crazy. But I generally, I mean, I have big arms to begin with, but like to add a little extra something to them, a little extra oomph into them when you get really depleted. Sometimes I'll do that. Although this year I kind of pulled it out. I didn't run anything the last couple of weeks going into my show. I didn't want any inflammation or anything to look weird. I don't know. Sometimes I think it takes away from the physique. So I was using it earlier in my prep, and then I decided to pull it at the end, last month or so. I don't think I ran any the last month or so. I didn't need it. My arm's pretty big as is anyway.
And prior to him was a guy named Nasser El-Sambadi, who was a famous Olympia competitor, one of the top Olympic competitors of all time. Arguably could have won Mr. Olympia a couple of times, at least one year. And so we're going to talk about different site enhancement things and how it's evolved over the years. So first of all, I'll start with Nasser El-Sambadi. And the reason I'm starting with him is because I actually met Nasser personally back, I believe it was in 2005. Yeah, 2005. I was preparing for the NPC USAs, and I happened to be driving down to Mexico, and I stopped by what's now called The Gym, but it was World Gym at the time. And I was training there. I was about 230 pounds, and I ran into Nasser. And I told him I'm about 6 weeks out from the USAs, and he took a look at me, and he said he thought I looked good. He thought I could do well. And he offered to train me. And this guy was like a top Olympia competitor, so...
That's pretty cool that Nasser offered to train him. Who was going to say no to that? It would be interesting just to find out what the dude does and how he structures things. I mean, curiosity would have gotten the best of me. I certainly would have loved to have heard what Nasser did from the horse's mouth and seen firsthand what his protocols and what his tactics were. Some of the stuff is now look, I'm not saying all of these dudes, but some of the stuff that guys at the top do is crazy, man. Like this is an area where I have been wrong in some of my older videos. People told me I should take them down because I've changed my mind, but dude, people change their minds on shit. That's just part of life. You grow, you learn, you gather new information, you change your perspectives and thoughts. It's fluid, I would say. But I used to be very naive, more so naive in the early 2000s. I used to think that, 250 milligrams of DECA or 300 milligrams of DECA is all you needed to take to be a pro bodybuilder. I know that's not true now, but I severely underestimated what a lot of guys were doing even just a couple of years ago until I've talked to some people and had firsthand knowledge of what actually goes on. Look, I'm not saying that everybody does that, but certainly there is a group of people that push the limit in any sport, right? There's going to be guys that are out here. There's the mean, there's the outliers on either end, and there's the dude that probably does almost nothing and again can turn pro, the freak genetics guy. But I would say most of the guys that are at the top of the sport are pushing the limits.
Sure, I took him up on it. And Nasser put me on a crazy protocol, basically destroyed me in a short period of time.
Do you want to talk about the protocol a little bit? I'm curious to hear about it.
Yeah.
What was it?
We'll get into it.
Yeah, I'm going to get into details.
He's gonna give the overview and then I'll give details.
So, first of all, I was a high intensity trainer, and he was a high volume trainer. So I started training with him, and it was like tons of sets, really fast paced, lots of reps. And I'll explain to you why he did that in a moment.
Look, guys, I don't see a lot of guys at the top of the sport doing high intensity training. Dorian Yates certainly did. He was an exception. But the majority of the guys are doing higher volume. And I have my thoughts and theories on it. I'm sure Larry's going to go into it here in just a second. But some of it is the insulin and carbohydrate intake. When you're pushing carbs really high, you're pushing insulin high, I think that matches up better with a higher volume style training. you're more of a, I don't know, Milos, I think, calls it his hyperemia system. I think that's what he calls it. I could be slaughtering that. I apologize to Milos if I'm getting this wrong. But long story short, when you're eating a bunch of carbs, when you're taking a bunch of insulin, it seems like it pairs better with doing a higher volume, higher paced metabolic style of workout, I would say. Most of the guys aren't training to failure. They're letting the drugs do the work. Whereas if you're probably using less drugs, you probably need more intensity. But once again, there's been people that have done it both ways and have been successful. I would say, though, the majority of people are doing higher volume training. So I'm not surprised that Nasser was a higher volume trainer. I mean, I don't think that was any big secret.
Gear usage, I can't remember the actual dosages, but it was the most I've ever taken ever. I want to say it was like probably 3 grams or more of various compounds.
I mean, 3 grams or more, I mean, that's pretty typical. I've said that a million times. People call me crazy and say that's insane. But I ran 3 grams on my contest prep this year. And I would say I grew into my show. In fact, I came in 12 pounds heavier than I did at my previous show. I didn't really lose any weight on contest prep, maybe a couple pounds. I just got harder and harder and harder and harder. So 3 grams of gear works.
GH, the whole thing, training twice a day, cardio twice a day. And he's the first person that taught me about Synthol. I knew about Synthol, but I never used it. I didn't know how to use it. So he's the one that introduced me to Synthol. And
that's interesting to me that Larry, he's a guy that seemed to have been around the block a lot, had been very knowledgeable. I mean, I think he was Mike Mentzer's roommate at one point. Lived with Mike Mentzer, if I recall correctly. He had some crazy stories, Mike Mentzer stories, if you guys ever want to go down the rabbit hole. Didn't really know much about Synthol. Synthol was pretty widely used in the 90s and early 2000s. I didn't really hear about it. I don't know. I mean, I guess I can see that. Like, I'd always heard stories, but everybody denied it. And I never really messed with any of it until the last few years, to be honest with you, when I was younger. Maybe I dabbled. I don't remember. Maybe I dabbled just a tad. Like, I bought a bottle of Pump and Pose or whatever that shit was back in the 2005. I think I remember buying it and not finishing it.
And he specifically wanted me to use it in my shoulders and arms. And he gave me this regimen. It was 3 cc's in my front delt, 3 cc's in my side delt, 3 cc's in my rear delt, 3 cc's on the outer head of my bicep, 3 cc's on the inner head of my bicep, 3 cc's on the long head of my tricep.
Boston Lloyd would have loved this guy.
3 cc's on the lower head of my tricep and 3 cc's on the outer head of my tricep. So if you add that up, what is that, 9?
21?
18?
I think more.
It's 9, sounds like 9 in each side, so 27. 9 times 3, 27 is what in my head is what I'm hearing. Three heads of the tricep, 3, or did he say 2 in the bicep? I think, okay, so maybe it's 24. If there's only 2 in the bicep and 3 in the tricep. I don't remember. But anyway, a lot. There's usually 100 to 120 cc's in one of the bottles of, I think the Boston Lloyd stuff has 120 cc's in it. Something like that. The old Painless Pumps ones, I think, were 100. So you would only get 3 uses out of a bottle. And that shit is not cheap either, man. It's like 120, 130 bucks a piece. So if that's the case, I think he says here in a minute that he was running it 3 times a week. If that's the case, you're using $100 a week of site enhancement oil.
More than that.
And 6.
The 7-8 sites.
24.
24
Sorry.
cc's.
24 milliliters per what? Per day?
All right, so you're going to get 4. If there's 100 cc's in a bottle, you're going to get 4. rounds out of a bottle.
A week?
No. This is
Daily?
no. 24 milliliters injected into my shoulder and arm. That's on one side. So that's a
Oh shit! Yeah, I'm wrong. So that's one side. So two sides. So it's 50. So yeah, you would only get 2 rounds of it.
oil.
Oh my God.
Three times a week.
48 times 3 is what, 96?
Yeah, so literally
No,
I
48
loaded up these.
No, that's not 96. 48 times 3. Let's see, would be 144. If I'm correct. I mean, yeah, 40. Yeah, 48. 3. Yeah, 144.
These syringes full of the oil, and I'd have, let's see, 3, 6, 8, so 16 syringes full, and I'd have them all laid out, and I'd sit in a chair just like this, and my ex-wife would inject me, and it took like an hour for her to inject that all over. Yeah, it was not pleasant at all, and it has to go deep. So you had to use a 1.5 inch 22 gauge needle.
Ooh.
The whole time.
How long did you do this for?
He had me doing this, I don't know, it was like probably 5 weeks, last 5 weeks of the prep. To be honest with you, it didn't really work for me very well because
Yeah, I've messed around with it a little bit on prep. I've used Pump and Pose and then Boston Lloyd's 3cc product in the past, and it just, I don't know. This year I didn't run it the last few weeks because I didn't want inflammation. Kurt noticed he's noticed that my brachialis looked a little weird, and so I pulled it out. I didn't want it to look goofy. Don't want to name names, but there was a guy at North Americans I saw this year that had crazy looking lumpy shoulders and arms, and it was just really clear that he was jimmied up and it didn't look good. And look, most of these guys do this stuff at the top level. I wouldn't say all, but a lot of them do this stuff, so it's not that uncommon, not as uncommon as you think.
and then in the time I'm doing it, I'm also starving and had me doing crazy amounts of cardio. So I think I was like burning up the oil as I was doing it.
Yeah, from my understanding, you do have a fast metabolism, and that is just, it's actually like edible oil that you're putting in there. So you actually are.
Well, I think a lot of the oil is probably MCT based. I don't know. I don't know how the stuff's formulated. I've seen stuff with shark oil in it, but I guess that you're going to metabolize a lot of it. I know some of the oils now have things like silica and stuff in them that are not going to be metabolized, which is kind of scary. But yeah, your body is going to burn through that at some point.
Turning that into like triglycerides, and they're just turning into food. So you're actually maybe hurting your ability to get lean enough because you're taking in so much food. I mean, what did you say that was? It was 48 cc's, and I mean each cc has got to be like, I don't know, 20 calories or something.
All right, so let's do some math in here. No, it's not that much. There are 15 cc's in a tablespoon, and if I remember right, a tablespoon of oil is 14 grams of fat. So 14 times 9, there's like 126 calories. So let's just round it and say 120 calories. In a 15 cc's, so he said 45. So 360 calories and 150 cc's. Yeah, it's not that much, man.
Something like that. So you're taking in an extra.
Well, it wasn't enough calories because I was dropping weight like crazy because.
Well, if you're on a low enough,
he literally.
Okay, so let me think about this again real quick. So we said 15 cc's per tablespoon. There would be 3 tablespoons and 150 cc's. So he said that he's running 150 cc's a week. So yeah, we're not talking about a ton of calories. So 3 tablespoons of oil, that would be 32 grams of fat. So 32, yeah, so like 300 and some odd calories. It isn't that much.
He had me starving to death and doing cardio twice a day.
Me and Phil Viz actually have a hypothesis that that's why some of these guys aren't getting in shape and can't get in shape, because they're shooting in so much, and then they're actually just offsetting the amount that they would be burning with.
Well, if my math is correct here, that is wrong. You were talking about 300 and some calories divided by 7 days a week. I mean, we're talking about 50 calories a day. That's not going to make or break your contest prep. That's not why people aren't getting in shape. So that seems incorrect to me. Sorry, guys.
Just extra oil that they're injecting instead of eating it, but it's still giving them their body calories. So,
I guess that's possible.
I think in those days, Synthol was more of just like electrolytes and oil. Nowadays, it's like a PPMA, or it's the
no.
hyaluronic acid.
It's just all it is it's oil, and some people are putting silicone in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, silica, as I mentioned.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That there's different types of site enhancement oil,
but mostly it's just MTC oil. That's basically what it is.
MCT oil, yeah. That's in it. Medium chain triglyceride oil.
Yes.
Yeah, you're just trying to inflate the muscle with as much oil as you can.
And the one we used was pump and pose, so it was like MTC oil with some lidocaine in it, so it would kind of numb the site when you're injecting.
Yeah, pump and pose was the popular one in the early 2000s. I don't think it's around anymore. I don't know. I remember it's what everybody used in the early 2000s. I don't think you can get. I tried a bottle of it one time. I don't even think I used the whole bottle of it back in the early 2000s. Definitely not at this volume. That's crazy. I've never done anything like that.
Injecting all this oil in you. Mm-hmm. Anyways, it didn't work for me. I went from 230 pounds, almost in shape, to light heavyweight, to completely depleted and everything. But that's not. I don't want to really talk about.
Anyway, he doesn't want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it. This is something I think that people get themselves in trouble with when they go for the pro bodybuilder. And I'm not saying all pros are bad coaches, but the guy that is a genetic mutant and a genetic freak that can get in shape. Like you hear stories of Samson Diudo eating 1,500 calories a day, which I don't know if I really believe that one or not, but that's what I've heard. And doing an hour of cardio, and he still looks soft on stage. If I ate 1,500 calories a day and did multiple hours of cardio, I would be 185 pounds. I've done that before. So this is a lesson to be learned. What works for the genetic mutant that can't lose muscle does not work for the mere mortal. And a lot of pros only know one thing, and that's what works for them. It's individual. Any good coach can tell you, the best coaches out there, that you have to dial things in for the individual and figure out their specific metabolisms. Why I like starting working with guys in the off season. First thing I do is try to figure out where their BMR is, and I don't care what research says that most people have similar BMRs. I've seen BMRs be all over the fucking place. Now, maybe that's just people don't know how to measure food, but it's all relative. Anyway, I have to get people dialed in and figure out where their BMR is at first. And I've seen some wild outliers in years and years of coaching people. I've at this point, I've done diets for hundreds, maybe even over thousands. I don't know. Well up into over 1,000, I would say. I've done diets over 30 years, well over 1,000. So I took a break for a while and I didn't coach, but I did a lot of diets back in the early 2000s and late 90s. And I've been doing them again now over the last 3-4 years. Took a break there in the middle, but probably over 1,000 diets or 1,000 people that I've worked with. And I've seen some crazy metabolic variants.
My situation, I mean, that was my experience with it. I have other experience with it as well. I'll tell you that in a minute. But the reason for the high volume pumping training, I'll tell you now, is because you can't train heavy with this stuff. Because if you do train heavy, you'll literally push the oil out of the muscle and it'll under the skin. Mm-hmm. So you can't lift anything heavy. That's why you'll see these guys like in the rope doing like 10 million things with 10.
I don't know if that's the reason why guys don't train heavy. Maybe. I think it has more to do with the diet. I would imagine that he was running Nasser. He is in Nasser, was running a high carbohydrate diet with a bunch of insulin, and that style of diet pairs up better with a very high volume style training. At least that's what I've seen. That's what has worked for me, and I think that's what most pros do. A moderate to high volume training. You can look at what Milo Sarchev does. I think he calls it the hyperemia system or something like that. I apologize to Milos if I have that incorrect. But essentially, you eat a bunch of carbs, take a bunch of insulin, do a bunch of pump work, take use site enhancement oil, take a bunch of gear, and that's the protocol for getting big and swole.
10 pounds.
Yeah.
Just to pump blood in there, but
there's not actually it's not progressive overload training.
No, you can't lift anything heavy because literally the oil will leak out of the muscle and go on.
Well, nobody's doing progressive overload the last 6 weeks of contest prep. They just aren't. That's not taking anything away, and not being hypercritical here, but it's at that point it's just hanging on for dear life.
Under the skin, and then you have like this film of oil between your skin and your muscle. So any definition or vascularity or whatever will be gone. But what happened with when I first met Nasser, he told me that the Synthol was spreading through his body like a cancer and it was killing him. And he was having massive deep tissue massage all the time to break up the scar tissue that was created by the Synthol. And like he said, it was spreading through his body like a cancer. He told me this in the evening. The next morning we met to train, and he flexes his bicep and he goes, I did it here, here, and here.
So he did more.
So literally,
even after he said it was killing him.
After he said it was killing him, he was still injecting it. So this is insanity. He's like getting deep tissue massage to break up.
Well, there's some speculation. I think, Kurt and I have talked about it, and I believe it's Dante Trudell I heard talk about it in the past, that guys running this stuff, especially the things that have silica and some of the other shit in it that's got to be filtered by the kidneys, and that this may be a cause of some of the health issues that people are having later down the line, kidney and cardiovascular issues that may be a result of using all these site enhancement oils. I mean, you can look at the guys from the 70s and 80s. Despite what they say, they weren't running conservative doses, and all those guys are still alive. So something changed.
Break up the scar tissue to remove the stuff, and then he'd put more in. He actually told me, said to me, have you ever after a show drained the oil out?
Because it's infected?
I don't know, just to take it out of there.
Yeah, I guess that's an oil change.
I'm like, this is the first time I've done this. I never did it before. So I don't know. But anyways, so that's how people started with the Synthol. And I would say it did work. Like if you look at Nasser, he looked unbelievable. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what you're looking at. Now, fast forward, you have Rich Piana.
Now, the trained eye can see this stuff. And I have to wonder, and when you're in person, like when I'm backstage at shows, I can clearly see the guys that have overdone it. You can see them. I mean, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. And I would have to imagine the judges can see that shit. And not taking anything away from Nasser, but I'm sure that it had to been in the back of their minds when they saw him on the stage versus somebody like Dorian, who I would be shocked if Dorian was using any of that stuff. I don't think Dorian's the type of guy that would. He seems to be the guy that earns it the hard way. But and just looking at his arms, you could look at the guys that have it, and they have no separation. They have no striations. They don't have the feathered triceps. Their arms just look like a big blob.
Who became the crazy super freak of Team C? What is it? 5cc.
No, 5%.
5%. Yes.
3cc was Boston.
Oh man, this picture of Rich Piana makes me sad. I don't know if this was before he passed away or not, but you can clearly see, if you look here, see where the shoulders are warped. This is warped down here on his bicep. There's this big lump up here. I mean, this picture's been clearly manipulated. This has been photoshopped, and not in a good way. It doesn't look. I mean, he was a big dude. Like, bro, you didn't need to do this. God rest his soul. I don't know. This may have been some just idiot on the internet that did this, but this is way overdone.
Austin.
Yeah, 5%. Anyways,
5%.
so Rich was already a pretty big guy. He had placed well at nationals, but then he became a super freak. And what I mean by that, he had like 24, 25 inch arms.
Yeah, look at this photo.
Yeah, and
Just massive, insane shoulders. His 26-inch arm, insane shoulders, like, and then the rest of his body, his back and his chest was like, not nearly. I think this might be an enhanced photo even, but
it's definitely
what people don't realize is those of us who knew him. Okay, so you had the Rich Piana that was a big guy who had been training for
Now, see, this is what he looked like. Still big, just not manipulated.
probably 20 years. And then all of a sudden, within like less than a year period of time, he went from probably 21-inch arms to 24-inch arms after training 20 years. Like, you don't just all of a sudden put 3 inches on your arms after you're that far into it. You pretty much max out your genetics.
yeah.
And he actually asked me to help him prep for the last show he did because he didn't know how to diet or anything. And when I first met him, he flexed.
That's hilarious that he didn't know how to diet. He was a bodybuilder. I mean, a lot of guys don't. That's what I make my whole coaching business off of. I was helping guys that don't know how to diet. There is some nuance to it. But, yeah, that's kind of funny to me that he didn't know how to diet.
His arm, and he said they're 24 inches. And I said to him, I looked at his arm, I said, Rich, what's in your arm? And he goes, nothing. He goes, nothing, just side injections. And I'm like, come on, Rich, this is me. I can see it. There's something in your arm. Like, it looks like a football. It doesn't move when you flex it. It doesn't change shape. There's no separation between your bicep and your tricep. It's just this big mass. And he kind of got mad about that. He didn't want to admit it. But it turns out what Rich was doing was a new treatment, newer than Synthol anyways. It's called PMMA. PMMA is a plastic that's injected. It's like little plastic beads and injected right into the muscle, and it bonds permanently to the muscle fiber. So once it's in there, it adheres itself to the muscle fiber.
It's like filler.
And it's just there. It's like an implant. And
All right, so for those of you that don't know what it is, I'm going to read off here what ChatGPT spit back at me. It is polymethyl methylcrylate. Injections are a type of soft tissue filler that used for cosmetic and medical purposes, primarily to augment or correct the appearance of facial or body structures. PMMA is a biocompatible, non-biodegradable, I say that with an emphasis because it does not break down once it's injected like Synthol. Synthol breaks down and eventually is removed from the body through biological processes, so it's non-biodegradable synthetic polymer that has been used in medical applications for many years, including in bone cement and dental work. It's the dental cement that they put on your damn teeth. And in cosmetic procedures, PMMA injections are often used for permanent, long-lasting dermal filler. PMMA fillers consist of microspheres of methylcrylate suspended in a collagen gel or another carrier substance. Like he was saying, they're these little plastic beads that are encapsulated in silicone. They're permanent. They get injected in the body. Eventually the microsphere acts as a scaffold, encourages the body to put collagen around it, so you get all this collagen buildup around it. So what will happen in the muscle, if I understand correctly, you inject this thing in, the body's going to form collagen around these things, and you're going to end up with this stiff structure in the muscle. So that's why, like, Rich Piana, when he was relaxed, looked like he was flexed or pumped at all times, because it's this rigid structure that has formed in his muscle from this stuff. I can't imagine what it would have looked like if they had done a biopsy or cut that open. I can't even imagine what that looked like. And also just I would imagine that in some people, it says biocompatible, so in theory it shouldn't cause an immune response. But I would have to imagine there are outliers that people that are going to have severe immune responses to this stuff, and it's going to cause all kinds of fucking problems.
Is once it's in there, it can't come out.
Is that what a lot of these people are using that do like face fillers when they get their cheekbones amped up and Juvederm? Is that Juvederm?
Yeah, that's hyaluronic acid.
Okay.
That's just like a water thing. It's not.
I didn't know some people did PPMA in their face also, but I think I heard it's big in Brazil.
So there was a Brazilian talk show host. She actually did PMMA.
Yeah, they do it in their butts down in Brazil. They inject the shit in their asses.
In her butt. Yeah, and her body rejected the PMMA. And so
there you go, an immune response to the shit.
It was killing her. So they had to remove it. In order to remove it, they had to surgically remove all the muscle that it attached to. So she literally, I saw a picture, they removed half of her glute and half of her hamstring on one side. And she was in the hospital for over a year and almost died. Ooh. It's like you can't take it out. So once it's in there, it's stuck. And I'm pretty positive that Ilium Golem was doing the same thing.
This PMAA?
PMMA.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a good place to stop here, folks. But yeah, you can see in Ilya Golem, he was doing the exact same thing, or at least that's what it looked like to me. That it had that rich Piana look to it. I feel bad for these guys because it is really, we're all fucking crazy to do this sport. Let's be honest with you. But there's levels of crazy. There's levels of risk. I mean, this is just insane. To each his own, whatever you want to do. I mean, whatever makes you freaking happy. Sorry, I'm burping. I had my steak before I came here. But whatever makes you happy, I'm a person that's whatever floats your boat, do your thing. I'll stay in my lane. But there's some severe body dysmorphia and probably mental illness that's going on here that for the type of person who wants to do this stuff. And no disrespect meant. I actually kind of feel sorry for people that are in that state. Look, I do some crazy shit too. So I'm no better. But anyway, folks, let me know what you think about these crazy site enhancement protocols in the video description below. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is insane, or have you seen worse? You've heard of worse? Let me know. Thank you, and I appreciate each and every one of your support. Take care. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.